After 43 years apart, an American woman finally finds her Vietnamese mother. It was a humid afternoon in Ho Chi Minh City when the past and present collided, quietly, almost shyly, but with the weight of 43 years carried between two hearts. In a modest home tucked among the city's restless streets, Nguyen Thi Dep sat waiting, her hands trembling in her lap. She was 70 now, but in her mind, she was still the young mother who had whispered goodbye to her little girl on the day Saigon fell. Outside, the door opened. Footsteps approached, measured, uncertain, but steady. Then she appeared. The daughter Dep had last seen as a fragile 3-year-old, now a grown woman with soft eyes and a nervous smile. For a fleeting moment, neither knew what to say. How do you bridge a lifetime of questions in a single meeting? Then, cautiously, they embraced. It was awkward, hesitant, but real. Arms that had not held each other for over 4 decades finally closed the distance. And with that simple, shaky hug, the dam broke. Laughter tangled with tears. The mother's hands, once young and strong, now traced the face of the woman she had imagined 1,000 different ways. The daughter, Leigh Mai, searched her mother's eyes that looked like her own, for answers, for memories, for belonging. No words could contain it all. But in that room, after a lifetime apart, mother and daughter began again. A mother's goodbye. The day Saigon fell and a child flew away. The year was 1975. Saigon was collapsing under the weight of a war that had already stolen too much. Lives, dreams, homes, families. The air was thick with smoke and fear. In the chaos of April, American helicopters roared overhead, airlifting the last troops and desperate civilians as communist forces closed in on the capital. Among the crowd surging through the streets, there was a woman, Nguyen Thi Dep, holding the small hand of her 3-year-old daughter, Leigh Mai. Dep's heart was drowning in a storm of love, fear, and the unbearable knowledge that the safest place for her child was not beside her, but away from her. Her friends, sensing the danger that loomed, urged her to send Mai on one of the planes destined for the United States under Operation Babylift. Over 3,000 Vietnamese children were being flown out of their collapsing homeland, away from gunfire and uncertainty, to new lives in unfamiliar lands. Dep hesitated. She had already lost so much. The man she loved, Joe O'Neill, an American soldier and Mai's biological father, had returned to the States in 1973, never to be heard from again. But this, giving up her daughter? The decision was unbearable. Yet what choice did she have? The paperwork was filed. In less than a week, everything was set. On the day of the departure, Dep stood inside the crowded, echoing building that served as the final threshold between her and the unknown. Her little girl, dressed simply, clutched at her, eyes wide, innocent, and afraid. As Dep turned to leave, Mai's tiny voice pierced the noise. "Mom, don't leave." The words stopped Dep in her tracks. She stood frozen, heart breaking, every instinct screaming to grab her child and run home. But she didn't. She couldn't. "I cried every night for months," Dep later confessed, the memory still fresh. Decades later, she walked away, carrying with her a wound that never healed, a hollow ache where her daughter's laughter once echoed. Yet even in her grief, Dep clung to a fragile hope that one day the war would end, peace would return, and somehow, some way, she would find her daughter again. But that hope grew fainter as years passed. Vietnam remained severed from the United States for 20 long years. The borders were closed. The records of the children sent away were scattered, incomplete, or lost entirely. And yet, Dep waited. She never stopped waiting. Across the ocean in the United States, that little girl was renamed Leigh Mai Botten Small. She grew up in a loving American family with a brother and sister who were also adopted. She lived in a beautiful home, had the privileges of peace, safety, and education, the very life her mother had wished for her. Yet, even surrounded by love, Leigh Mai felt the shadow of an unknown past. She always knew she was adopted. She knew she was half Vietnamese, but the faces of her birth parents, the sound of her mother's voice, and the scent of her homeland were all blank spaces in her mind. As she grew, married, and had children of her own, those blank spaces began to ache. She started wondering, who was her mother? Was she still alive? Did she ever think about her lost daughter? In 2000, when motherhood stirred these questions more deeply within her, Leigh Mai made the journey back to Vietnam, accompanied by her adoptive mother. All she carried was her Vietnamese name, Phuong Mai, the town of her birth, and the name of the group home where she had stayed before boarding the Babylift plane. But the trail had gone cold. The group home's records began a month after the operation ended. There was no trace of her time there. Heart heavy with disappointment, Leigh Mai returned to the U.S., her questions still unanswered. And life went on. Yet some threads, no matter how tangled or fragile, refused to break. A thread through time, the digital spark that reignited a lost family. Decades passed. Leigh Mai raised her family, built her life, but the quiet yearning for her roots never fully faded. Then, 4 years ago, in a moment that felt as casual as it was life-changing, she sent her DNA to Ancestry.com, a digital portal that promised the faintest possibility of reconnection. For a long time, nothing significant emerged. A few distant cousins, a trickle of genetic matches, none of which held answers. But then, in October, an email arrived. It wasn't just another distant connection. This one said, "I think you're my sister. Your Vietnamese mother is looking for you." Leigh Mai's heart raced. She read the words again, hardly daring to believe. The woman who had contacted her was her half-sister, a daughter from her biological father, Joe O'Neill, who had passed away in 2011. The thread that had seemed severed forever was suddenly alive, pulsing, tangible. The connection was no accident. A man in Vietnam had seen the death announcement for Joe O'Neill. He knew about Depp, the woman in Saigon who had once loved an American soldier, and about the daughter she had sent away, the daughter she had been searching for all her life. One message led to another, and then to a flurry of conversations. The digital spark had become a flame, illuminating paths that had long been lost in darkness. When Depp heard that her daughter had been found, not just alive but thriving, she was overwhelmed. To her, Mai was still that delicate 3-year-old with the wide, pleading eyes. She tried to imagine her grown-up daughter, a woman now, with children of her own. And so, after 43 years apart, a meeting was arranged. A reunion, a rebirth, across oceans, still one family. In Ho Chi Minh City, the old Saigon, where it all began, Depp stood waiting. She was now 70 years old, her face marked with the lines of time, her heart pounding with a mixture of joy and dread. She feared her daughter might resent her, that Leigh Mai would ask, "Why did you send me away? Why did you abandon me?" But when Leigh Mai arrived, there were no accusations, no bitterness, just awkward, tearful hugs at first, the kind that carried decades of longing. Then the walls broke down. They laughed, they cried, they studied each other's faces as though memorizing every detail for the first time. For Leigh Mai, the revelation was profound. She hadn't just lost a mother, she had lost an entire family, uncles, aunts, cousins, all the branches of her family tree she'd never imagined existed. "There was love there," she said, her voice soft, "and aunts and uncles." And that never crossed my mind. For Depp, the reunion was a gift she thought she might never receive. Watching her daughter, grown, independent, a mother herself, filled her with peace. "I love her a lot," she said softly, "and I am at ease because Mai has grown up, has her own family, can take care of herself. Before it was always, is my baby still alive? What life does she have?" I was worried she had it hard. But Leigh Mai's life had been good. Her adoptive family had raised her with love, just as Depp had hoped when she made her agonizing choice. As they spent time together, Depp shared stories of her life, of Vietnam's long recovery after the war, of the unrelenting hope that one day her daughter might find her way back. for Leigh Mai. Understanding the depth of that sacrifice brought clarity and peace. It wasn't abandonment, it was the ultimate act of love. They are separated still by oceans, by continents, but technology and love bridges the gap. They share photos, stories, and updates. Leigh Mai jokes about teaching her mother to use an iPhone so that Depp can see her grandchildren's faces, hear their voices, witness their lives. She thought about bringing Depp to America to close the distance once and for all. But Depp is content in Vietnam, in the land where her life began and where she waited faithfully for 43 years. Their story is a testament to the resilience of the human heart. Not every Babylift child found their way home. Not every parent's search ended with a reunion. But in this story, amidst war, loss, and silence, a mother's love endured, unyielding, unwavering. Sometimes love is patient enough to wait a lifetime. Sometimes, after decades adrift, love still finds its way home.